I started with, and I want to get back to rejection, because that's so common. I want to show you how to deal with that. I said that when it comes to psychological injuries, we often don't even know that we're injured. Not so much with rejection, because as we said, it really hurts. So if you ask people, how do you typically respond when you get rejected? What's your typical response? Here's what people say. One of the first things that people will say is, how people typically respond, is they get a little bit angry and aggressive. Fatal Attraction, anyone? Do you remember the Glenn Close thing? This is after she boiled the bunny. And so, yes, we get a little bit angry and we get a little bit aggressive. But the most common thing we do when I say to people, what do you do when you get rejected? What's the first word people shout out? Vodka! So yes, it's alcohol. But it turns out when you stuff your feelings down with alcohol, they just come back up again. And then the last thing we typically do is we try to drown our sorrows with food by hugging the dessert plate, emotional overeating, while someone stands over us with a supportive hand on our shoulder. So, needless to say, these don't work that well. Thing is that rejection injures us in a variety of ways. But one of the most important things we have to do to recover is to revive our feeling of self-worth. Our self-esteem just took it between the legs, if you know what I'm saying. But the problem is that when our self-esteem takes a blow, when our self-esteem is low, the thing that does the most damage to it is us. Because once we got rejected, here's what we do. We'll start to be self-critical, and we'll self-blame, and we'll list all our faults and all our deficiencies. Well, you know, if I was taller or blonder or smarter or richer, and I'm such a loser and I'm such an idiot and this always happens to me, we literally savage our self-esteem when it's already low. We started off with an injury that's this big, and then we make it this big. And it's not just our self-esteem. The majority of our psychological wounds are self-inflicted. We would never do that with a physical wound. You would never get a cut and go, oh, I'm going to put salt in it, and I'm going to see if I can expand it a little bit. Or, oh, I'm feeling terrible, I have a cold and a fever. This would be the good time to go outside in the cold weather without a coat. That wouldn't, oh, I sprained my ankle, let me do the marathon tomorrow. It would never occur to us in the physical realm. We do it psychologically all the time. We become self-critical when our self-esteem is low. We psych ourselves out after a failure. I have a big chapter on failure in the book. We don't have time for it today, but we constantly psych ourselves out afterwards. We push people away from us when we're lonely. We indulge the urge to brood and to ruminate when it's really bad for us, and we distance ourselves when we're feeling guilty instead of actually trying to repair the relationship. So we do so much self-damage when it comes to our psychology, which again would be unfathomable to us if our injuries were physical. So now back to self-esteem. When we're nurturing our self-esteem back to health, it's extremely important that we think of it as nurturing our self-esteem back to health. Because self-esteem is really important. What we know is that when our self-esteem is higher, we are more resilient to things like rejection and failure and anxiety and stress. When we encounter them, they bother us less, they hurt us less, and we recover from them more quickly. And in that way, self-esteem is like an emotional immune system, and low self-esteem is like having a weak emotional immune system. And if you think of it that way, as your self-esteem as being an emotional immune system, you would think of that's something we would want to strengthen. You know, our self-esteem is the armor that we wear to life. It protects us from the slings and arrows that we encounter in life. Who would think of poking holes in their own armor before going out to battle? But we do that when it comes to our self-esteem. We are that critical. And it's a real, real problem.